Can you offer some advice for a sister who's looking to tone up? Less body fat, more muscle, high endurance. I used to cycle a lot, and it's been a while since I've had done 100-mile rides. So I'm trying to gear myself in that way. I'm also looking for some self-defense classes too. If you know any, I appreciate your feedback. Well, there's a short answer and then there's the long answer. The short answer typically comes down to number one, you want to be able to strength train 3 to 4 times a week. Number two, consume your body weight in grams of protein. So in my case, I'm like 200 pounds. I'd want to consume close to 200 grams of protein daily. That's going to bump up, because protein is what you call a thermogenic nutrient. Your body has to burn more energy to process it. Thirdly, you want to consume your body weight not your body weight, but you want to consume your maintenance calories. So in my case, for example, and this is something that you might want to find out, what is your maintenance caloric number, right? So in my case, it's like 2,800 calories a day. If I did nothing at all and I just ate 2,800 calories a day, I would stay at the same weight. And the third factor is rest and recovery, because when you are exercising and you're strength training and your body is processing those proteins to rebuild itself, you need to give it the appropriate recovery time, specifically get enough sleep. So this is the short answer in general. If you're trying to burn fat, build muscle, get stronger and all that. Now, the long answer in terms of specific context to what you had suggested in relation to bike rides as well as self-defense classes. So the idea of toning up and getting healthy and getting into shape is a little bit different when it comes to the idea of engaging in a particular sport. Because when you engage in a sport, there's specifics that go along with that. I'm going to share what has worked for me as someone who's done century rides, as someone who has biked from New York City to Montreal, and as someone who engages in strength training and as a martial artist. I'm going to share with what works for me and potentially could work for you too, given specific nuances that are specific to you. So, number one, in terms of the first question is, what kind of shape do you have to be in to be able to do, your century rides, your 100+ mile rides in a day? Well, it's a question of honestly, I really believe that anybody who's relatively healthy can do 100 miles. I don't believe it's that hard. Granted, you've got the right kind of bike to help you accomplish that. But at the same time, it's also a question of how quickly do you want to be able to accomplish that thing. The first time I attempted a century, I ended up doing 82 miles. And we ended up calling it a day because we ran out of time. Essentially, we started early morning, right after sunrise, and we kept going. And once the sun set, we called it. And I ended up doing 82 miles that day. Could I have completed 100 that day? Yes. But this was my first time attempting a century. Before that, the longest I had ever ridden was 36 miles, and that was going to and back to work. So it was like 16 point something miles to work, and then another 16 some miles back. Right, split over in the morning and the evening, going to and from work. So prior to that, those were my longest rides. And so for a time attempting a century, it was simply a matter of, did I have enough time to do it? So I realized, hey, if I want to complete a century, I need to pick up my pace. So again, it becomes a question of, can you maintain a particular pace? First time I attempted a century, I was going anywhere between 8 to 12 miles an hour on average. So for you, in terms of being able to build up endurance, you want to look at, are you struggling to maintain a particular pace? So I'll give you an example. I know what I like to do is maintain a relationship between my heart rate and the speed in which I am riding my bike on average. So I know that if I'm going to ride a century, if I'm going to ride a long distance, essentially anything above 20 miles, right? If I'm going to ride anything above 20 miles, I want to ensure that throughout the ride, I am maintaining my heart rate below 165. Because I know if I go past 165, then I'm going to go into what you call your anaerobic, essentially where your body starts burning any and all kind of tissue for energy. Whereas if you stay below a particular heart rate, in my case, I'm 33 years old, right? So 220 minus 33, it gives you a particular max heart rate. And so if you can stay within about 70% of that, then that's the heart rate that you want to stay under. So I realized that, and one of the cool things is when you wear like a heart rate monitor on your chest, or one of those Fitbits on your wrist, and then you attach that data to something like Strava, then you can see what your numbers are. And when you get, and one of the ways that you can kind of look at, hey, you know what, I want to be able to do a century within 8 hours, and you calculate that maybe you need to be going 100 divided by 8, how many miles an hour that you need to go. So if you want to be able to maintain that average pace, the question is, can you maintain that pace for an hour, for 2 hours, can you maintain that pace for 20 miles? Can you maintain that pace for 40 miles? You want to progressively build up to that. And part of it is also understanding the relationship, not only with the speed in which you're going, not only the heart rate that you have, but the cadence of your pedaling speed. That's going to be the third major factor. These three things together will make for you having an efficient ride. What is that cadence, you ask? Maybe the cadence is you want to be about 90 rotations, 90 RPM, if that's the word, rotations per minute. So essentially you want to be, your foot should be turning 90 times. And how do you do that? Well, if you have a cadence sensor, you'll see what that number is. You want to stay at least 90. So that means if you're at 90 and your heart rate's at like 175, then you need to jump down a gear so you can relax. But then that's where that's where your relationship's gonna happen. Now, one of the things I would suggest is I would say go ahead and attempt a century. I don't know where you live, so I don't know what the weather is like right now. As of this recording, it is December. And December in Houston is about anywhere between 60 to 70 degrees. So, in fact, this is a perfect time of year to go, long rides here in the South. However, if you're anywhere above or close to the Mason-Dixon line in the United States, then it would be a little tough to do a century. And so I would suggest, hey, you know what? If the weather warms up, as soon as you get the opportunity, go ahead and attempt a century. See where you get in a day of riding, and I'm talking from sunrise to sunset, right? And that'll give you a baseline to start working and progressing towards your goal. So I hope that answers your biking question. Personally, I'm planning another long ride, 4th of July weekend. Hopefully that's the plan, to go from this, because last year, was it last year? Yeah, it was last year where my buddy and I, we did New York City to Montreal. Now we want to do the West Coast, where we're going to be going to Portland to Vancouver. It's a shorter ride, shorter by about 100 miles. Instead of being 450 miles, it's going to be about 350 miles. So we're talking about 3.5 days of riding potentially. And so, and this is basically one of the things I look at. Now, I haven't done long rides in a while, so my pace probably has slowed down. But essentially, it's maintaining that relationship between your heart rate, your cadence of pedaling, as well as your average speed. Once you manage and master the balance between these three, your riding is going to be really, really efficient. Now, when it comes to self-defense classes, again, it's something specific of like, if you're looking for self-defense classes and not sport classes, then that's going to be a little bit, that's the thing that you need to distinguish. I'm assuming since you mentioned self-defense, and as an adult, whenever we look for martial arts training, we typically look at self-defense. Whereas with children, or even if you're younger, you have that athleticism, you want to get into sport. Now, if you want to get into sport, it's going to be the same kind of mentality of approaching one's training as you approach the biking. But if you're looking for self-defense, in fact, you want to go the other way. You want to be effective and efficient in doing the activities and the technical movements of any martial arts without expending a lot of energy. As the saying in judo goes, you want to apply maximum efficiency with the minimum amount of effort. So jiu-jitsu is the same mentality. However, if you want to learn self-defense, one of the key factors you're going to want to understand is that self-defense and martial arts generally contains a number of factors. Are we talking about armed self-defense, or are we talking about unarmed self-defense? Depending on the state that you live in, if your state allows for concealed carry, a gun is going to be your best self-defense weapon whatsoever. I live in Texas. It's not uncommon to have people open carry or even concealed carry. And so as a result, if you live in a state that allows for that, then by all means, go ahead and do that. Another self-defense tool I'm talking about, I guess, sort of armed or not armed, is having a flashlight. One of those little flashlights that fits in the palm of your hand. You can attach it to your keychain, and it has a strobe effect. Those are things that could, or it even allows you to see in the dark or even blind a potential aggressor. Those are very useful as well. I would say carry one of those things. One of the good things about that is they are typically airport friendly in the sense that it can serve as a keychain and as a flashlight. And it's not necessarily an assault weapon or a defense weapon, but it allows for whoever your opponent is to not necessarily see because they got a light that's in your face, or in their face, in fact. Now, outside of that, when it comes to empty hand self-defense classes or training options, it's not so much about the art, right? It's more about understanding what you're getting and who your instructor is. It might take you going to several schools until you find the right teacher and the right style that is suitable to you, right? So, and just kind of get a quick summary in terms of your martial arts and self-defense. Martial arts are typically unarmed, empty hands, typically consists of your striking, which is your punches, elbows, knees, and feet, right? Kicks and knees. It consists of takedowns. If somebody's attacking you, a lot of wrestling, a lot of judo, part of jiu-jitsu, a big part of that is takedown. And then the last part is grappling, right? Grappling, jiu-jitsu is known for grappling, judo is known for grappling, sambo is known for grappling. So many arts also focus on the ground game. The question is, a good self-defense program will kind of address the scenarios in almost all three of these situations. How to deal with attackers in commonly known situations. So knowing and understanding this, also look at when you approach a school to learn self-defense, one of the things that you may want to look at is, are they into the art? Are they into sport? Are they specifically into the area of combatives to learn self-defense specifically? So now that's the thing that you got to look at. And certain schools, like for example, one of the schools that I go to is Gracie Barra, right, which is a Brazilian jiu-jitsu school. But a big part of their whole thing is getting into it's sport, right? They emphasize competition a lot. Now, that's not a big deal for me because, for one, I've been a martial artist since I was a kid, so I kind of have the self-defense side down. However, would I recommend going to a sport-focused school from the get-go? Yes or no, it depends on the instructor, right? Like, I know some schools, they have a very heavy, although they're a sport franchise, they might have a self-defense focus, whereas others might not. So again, you have to look at the school itself, you have to look at the instructor. Granted, everybody's going to say that they provide it all, they might even have it on their banner, but the thing that you want to do is observe a class. See if they are showcasing and practicing, at least in a couple of classes while you observe, if they're actually showcasing and demonstrating self-defense and not just sport. And in the case of self-defense, are they showcasing self-defense against striking? Are they showcasing self-defense against somebody when they take you to the ground, and so on? Are they showcasing self-defense between people who might be bigger and stronger than you? So these are things that you might want to consider, but you also have to consider what is your comfort level in any one of these sports. So, for example, with karate or Muay Thai, right? There's a lot of striking, there's some takedown, a little bit of ground game, but because it's mostly standing, that kind of setup was something that was more appealing to my wife. Whereas with ground game jiu-jitsu, where you're always on the ground, there's hardly any striking. In fact, a lot of the technicalities and learning is, just about joint manipulation and leverage, and also there's a huge cardio aspect to it because of the sport facet that's built into it as well. My wife saw that, she's like, you know what, I don't want to do jiu-jitsu. It's just too close in terms of proximity, especially with people that I don't know. And that's understandable. So you have to kind of look at and understand what is your comfort level. Now, personally, from the perspective of martial artists, as a Muslim and as somebody who values self-defense, these are things that you have to learn, right? Now, let's say you feel like you definitely want to learn jujitsu and stuff like that, but you don't like the proximity with, say, another man. Then you may want to consider, hey, what are some women's classes, or can they make accommodations for you to spar with only women? Now, generally, that's kind of counterintuitive, considering that if you're a female, you're more likely to be assaulted by a male than another female of your own size. But if you're into the sport, then yeah, you're gonna wanna. You would prefer to. You're gonna be paired up with women of your own size and skill and so on. So again, that's the difference. So these are the things that you may want to consider looking for. Now, getting back to your original question, which is part one. I know this is going to be a little bit of a long answer, so I hope I'm kind of covering all the bases here. The idea of losing your body fat and whatnot, or decreasing body fat, increasing muscle mass, and improving your endurance in general. Ultimately, you got to understand cellular life cycle, right? Because one of the key things in my experience when working with clients, especially in the space of fitness, is that they need to one of the things that gets them into the right mindset is knowing how long it's going to take them to make progress. So number one factor is understanding how long it takes for your body to change and adapt. When it comes to the effect of your diet, right? There is a concept of the quality of your food will affect your energy, and the energy that you have will affect the input that you have for the workouts that you engage in, and what you put into the workout, you will see the results of that over time. So it starts with what you eat. That's going to be number one. Number two is when it comes to eating, are you not only consuming the right foods, the right amount of foods? If you overeat, if you eat more than you need, then your body's going to pack on weight. Simple as that. Whether that's muscle weight or fat weight, your body's going to pack on weight. So therefore, if you want to shed fat and grow your muscles or strengthen your muscles or make your muscles more dense, then what you have to do is you have to eat less than your body's required, and maybe that requires you counting your calories for a whole week. There's an app for that, right? Called MyFitnessPal. Whatever you eat, scan the barcode, mention how many servings you're having, and boom, it'll give you your caloric intake, as well as a breakdown of your macros if you're looking for that. And the only macro that I really emphasize is your protein. Are you consuming your body weight in grams of protein? Essentially, so if you're 150 pounds, you should try to get 150 grams of protein. I know it feels like a lot, but it's you don't have to hit 150, right? But get closer, get to maybe 80%. And I had a friend, he was struggling gaining strength. And I asked him, how much protein you consume? He goes, I'm consuming a lot. I'm like, well, what's the number? And he goes, 20 grams of protein a day. And I was just like, okay, you know what? And I told him, you want to hit your body weight in grams of protein, but let's start you off with doubling. And when he doubled his protein intake, then he saw strength gains. And then afterwards, he found the means of doubling that again. He went from 40 to 80. And thus he packed on weight, good weight. And so that was a key thing was for him, because his challenge was gaining weight. Whereas if in your case you want to lose weight, so you want to consume less than your body weight, less than your body needs to maintain its energy, in terms of maintaining its weight in regards to the energy that you give it. But at the same time, you want to consume your body weight in grams of protein, and so that way, because protein is thermogenic, and plus when you are strength training, that's the next aspect. Really any program, but the focus has to be strength training. I'm not talking about cardio. I'm not talking about body weight stuff. I'm talking about genuine strength training, which focuses on four major areas. Number one is your lifting things off the ground, i.e. deadlifts, being able to push stuff off the ground, i.e. squats, being able to pull yourself, i.e. pull-ups and rows and things like that, and being able to push yourself off the ground, i.e. push-ups or presses, either like this or up top. So any one of these is like the focus of these 4 movements is strength training. Now, where do you go? What program do you should you follow? I would say a good starting place for almost anyone is one of the first books that I read, and I still recommend everyone to do it, whether you're a man or a woman, is Man 2.0, Engineering the Alpha. There's a 4-month program that basically lays out. Now, the first time I did it, it's 16 weeks, right? It's supposed to be 16 weeks because I was a beginner to the movements and things like that. And I was still trying to figure out what time to work out and things like and whatnot, all the different, distractions that come with life. It took me, what was supposed to be a 16-week program, it took me close to, I think, 21 or 22 weeks to get through it. Now, I've gone through that program several times since and been able to, keep it within the time that it's at, because then you start engineering your life to be in such a way that is that is reflective of somebody who is healthy. And so these are kind of things that you might want to pay attention to as in terms of whatever program you follow, going back to the whole idea of cellular life cycles, right? Whatever food that you eat is going to affect your blood. And so if you can do a blood test, great, go for it. If you can't, then fine. But understand that the effect of your diet, you'll see the effects of it in about 90 to 100 days. That's how long it takes for all your blood cells to replace themselves. Okay, so that's life cycle number 1. Life cycle number 2 has to do with your mobility, right? Your myofascial tissue, all of the stuff that connects your body and holds your body together. And that stuff takes about 7 to 8 months to all those cells to replace themselves. So if you feel like you're restricted in being able to move yourself, right? Let's say you can't lift your hand, or like you lift your body is like kind of bent out, as opposed to being able to lift in terms of the movement of your shoulders and your hips and whatnot. Give yourself 7 to 8 months to get to the appropriate movement and ability. On the other hand, what about the progress of strength training? Well, the progress of that, all your muscle cells in your body, they replace themselves anywhere about every 2 years, right? In reality, your blood, your myofascial tissue, and your muscles have already been replaced every 2 years. And so if you recognize that if you commit to strength training and exercising and changing your life for the next 2 years, then you're gonna have a whole new body, really. And when it comes to your bones and stuff, those are every 7 to 10 years, every decade, pretty much. You have a whole new body, right? So understand this this cellular life cycle to give yourself an idea of how much time you should commit. Starting point, I would say, go with the myofascial cycle, right? 8 months. So find a program that's 8 months. The book that I recommended, and Man 2.0 Engineering the Alpha, has a 4-month program built into it. It's also got some hormone optimization stuff that goes in there that'll potentially help you even more. First time I did that book was right after Ramadan, so I was already insulin sensitive, and a lot of the effect of that was really beneficial. So I hope that sheds clarity into the question that you had. If you have any more, let me know. Leave it in the comments below. I'll see you soon.